diversity of religions has not fallen prey to that. So he will be presenting this to us. He will be presenting his talk in English, but later for the questions and answers, he will be answering in French.
Thank you for the invitation, dear participants, dear all. I divided this presentation in four parts. The first one, the Balkans as an area of political and institutional instability. Second one, the presence of the European Union as a factor of stability. The third one, ambiguities and errors of the international community in the Balkans. And the final one, the Albanian anomaly and specificity. In the European history, the Balkans have always represented an area of political institutional instability due to the presence in it of different populations by language and religion, since it has constituted the frontier mark between two worlds, that of the West and that of the East. This pivotal position dates back to Roman times, which witnessed the progressive growth of the Slavic presence, shrinking the space of the Bulgarian and Dalmatian and Greek populations. Frontier territory between Eastern and Western Empire, the Balkans experiencing the conflict between the Eastern and Western Christian Church, and the rise of numerous religious confessions developed on their territory. The intense theological debate that developed in the area produced numerous and contradicting vision of the Christian message. The theological speculations that followed demonstrate the great propensity for the spiritual life of the populations did not fail to produce religious movements such as the Bogomil heresy, from which the Cathars were influenced in the West and from which Protestantism took up later on. Progressively, an amalgamation of ethnicities was eventually established, and the richness of thought and the variety of religious affiliations getting more complex after the Ottomans made their entry into the region. The region succeeded the fall of Constantinople. In particular, this event contributed in making the region a place of confrontation and clash between two worlds, the Christian and Muslim one. When in the 19th century nationalism exploded, their affirmation was conditioned and linked with religious affiliations that characterized the states, transmitted a conception of the world and the role of political institutions, and a particular version of the relationship between region and power directly linked to the vision that the various cults had their institutions. Some states took as their own the vision of this relationship, opting for harmonizing relations between political power and religious power. Others set out towards Western-style identity, relationships linked to the vision of Roman Christianity. Still others maintained in a widespread way reference to the presence of the Allah and to the practice of the Muslim cult. Even if territorially, this presence did not give life to states team, such as political expression of Islam, Indeed, Albania, which has become an area with a preeminent Islamic presence, will, as we will see, take on special institutional characteristics in matters of relations between the states and cults. The common future of the Balkans remains, anyway, this deep tension between the Christian world, which has succeeded in establishing a set of references at state level, and the Muslim one Lebanon, which has not yet been able to establish proper institutions, even in the areas like Bosnia, where it has a remarkably strong presence. This aspiration was not to find a positive solution, even within the Yugoslavian Federation, and eventually ended up in a war which has shattered the Balkans and at the end of the century we just left behind. After the war, which was the trademark of the Yugoslav Federation, disintegration, we have witnessed a process of adhesion to the European Union by the states newly emerged. A process which may seem hardly understandable unless we consider that after the affirmation of their territorial identities, that these entities were to assess the economical sustainability. But after all, they served the same union, or at least of a part of its components, to assimilate the Balkan area, a handy reservoir of manpower, and a transit corridor of energy, natural gas, or oil. The conflict in the Balkans has acquired the nature of nationalism and was fostered by affiliations. Amongst them, the religious affiliation has been of the most divisive ones, and therefore seeking an equilibrium and coexistence amongst the affiliated of different beliefs today is of relevant importance in maintaining the peace. In fulfilling this requirement, the new Balkan states have been induced by the European Union and international bodies to comply by bestowing to the set of relationships between state and religious denominations of nature and pluralism wherever the presence of one of the cults is strong. This because the presence of the majoritarian cult put in existence or made visible also by the implemented ethic and religious cleansing, has contributed in establishing homogeneous state structures, while paradoxically has driven to negotiated relationships with their religious cults. In reality, once defined by agreement, the relationship between state and the majority cult in sequence was produced to stipulate agreements with the minority cults, conferring to the relations negotiated features. This is what happened in Croatia and Serbia, and to some extent in Slovakia, while the relations in many other states of former Yugoslavia have acquired a conflictive nature by many ways of different specifics. Here the problems of not having unique denominations because representing the various religious cults has been and still is contested by several religious denominations due to the high degree of intra-denominational pluralism, which can trace these roots and historical motivations arise from the complexity and richness of theological religious debate. It happens that representing a cult is claimed by several religious organizations, as is the case of North Macedonia, where the Macedonian Orthodox Church lay claims to the denomination Orthodox, and thus to the right of representing all the Orthodox in the country against the Serbian Orthodox Church present in the country through the Archbishopric of Ohrid, or the case of Islamic religious community, which lay claims as well to be the sole representative, denying legitimacy to the autonomous presence to the Bashkia, Fetari, Islamic Masjidis, which is another Islamic community. Similar situation in Montenegro, where involved in the conflict is once more the Serbian Orthodox Church, precisely its branch in Montenegro, the Metropolitanate of Montenegro, and the Littoral and the Montenegro Orthodox Church. Not different is also the conflict in Kosovo between the Muslim community and the Tariqat contesting the representation of Islam in Kosovo. These conflicts show in all their dramatic nature the deficiencies of the international body and the European Union in managing the inter-religious conflict, above all when it acquires the nature of the inter-religious denomination conflicts. A great responsibility indeed is to be blamed on the state for not being able to draft international policies, to draft institutional policies able to guarantee the coexistence to the affiliates of different religious cults, diffusing the reason for religious motivated conflicts. In North Macedonia, the concept of denominations is introduced, claiming that religious consists of unoriginally doctrinary nucleus on beliefs and truths of faith which distinguish it. To this corresponds one and only one religious denomination which remains exclusive prerogative to only one organized religious entity. It is all too clear that in so doing, harm is done to the autonomy of professing, forbidding a group of persons bound by the same religion, performing common rituals, and behaving as an organization of religious nature to share the same doctrinal principles when these are optioned by a similar religious group. Recognizing who is the lawful holder of the denomination of law assumes temporaneous criteria of the registration in the registry of the religious denominations, leaving it up to the state authorities to choose the entitled one most pretenders. This choice excludes other religious groupings who thought historically present in the country from being counted and as recognized religious denominations. This is the case of the Serbian Orthodox Church, for ages bounded and deep-seated around the Archbishopric of Ohrid and of the Bektashi community. The European Council, the CEU, and the United Nations itself not always have grasped the complexity of the situation, suggesting institutional solutions, which instead of putting order to the conflict have fermented it. Recent court rulings, his Orthodox Ohrid Archdiocese against the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, application 26 December 2006, and the case of the Bektashi community and others versus the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, 12 April 2018, have had these errors recognized. The Kosovo legislations, by explicitly mentioning the traditional religious denominations' response to the conviction that was necessary to introduce a law guaranteeing special treatment to a limited number of religious denominations, establishing a barrier to their proliferation, limiting the professing autonomy, imposing the adoption of a unique denomination to each religious cult, and imposing a forced intra-beliefs coexistence amongst religious groups, often different in rituals, theological vision, religious practices, and social modalities, and expressing religious freedom, historical and experiential heritage. Despite guaranteeing freedom of association for religious purpose. The law does not allow forming any religious association which in name or by statute could generate confusion and be mistaken for any of the registered religious communities, as one and only one denomination could represent a religious cult. The aim of this disposition was to condition the procedures for restitution of ecclesiastical properties confiscated by the former regime and consent exclusively to certain organizations endowed of juridical personality and upon which the denomination was bestowed to claim ownership. In analyzing the law on religious freedom in the Balkans, it could be observed the choice of Constantine pair to bestow of civil juridical personality upon religious denominations to the recognition of only one denomination to each creed as a juridical instrument pursuant the aim of eliminating the interdenominational pluralism, constraining the believers to uniform to one and only one of the religious message readings. The state should instead acknowledge the very private nature of the religious phenomenon, which assume a public dimension from free manifestation of religious autonomy as stated by the Venice Commission in the recent opinion number 743/2013. Draft law on amendment and supplementation of law number 02/L31 of freedom and religion in Kosovo, 22 January 2004. Despite the presence of Catholics, Orthodoxies, Muslims, and Protestants, only one has managed to avoid religiously motivated conflicts, and it was Albania. It is so worth dwelling on the solution adopted and consider the separatism and pluralism of its legal system. Article 10 of the Constitution provides for the possibility of different religious denominations to stipulate relations with the state using the factor of the civil law, not special law. Acting in agreement with the parliament through the state committee for cults, the government has stipulated agreements with the Catholic Church and later with the Sunni Muslims, the Bektashi with the autocephalous Orthodox Church of Albania, with the Evangelical Brotherhood, a Protestant creed present in the country since the second half of the 19th century. The system is open to agreements with new creeds which eventually should proliferate in the country. In Albania, it is the common legislation that establishes the modalities on juridical personality entitlement by the religious denomination making use of the law on NGO. In this way, the Albanian state has succeeded in maintaining the religious peace in a framework of denominational and interdenominational pluralism, in keeping the religious peace, proving it can regulate the religious phenomenon from common legislation with resorting to a special law for guaranteeing the religious phenomenon. This was made possible because a very religious group is permitted to give to itself a proper juridical structure despite denomination or affiliation. It was so established an effective coexistence under the insignia of religious and interdenominational pluralism and individual religious freedom, guaranteeing the public and, in the same time, private role of religious affiliation. On the institutional plane, this activity of executive power is balanced by the parliament intervention, always in compliance with the power separation which keep on dialoguing between them. This recipe constitutes, to our opinion, a possible and effective option even for the countries in the western part of the continent, as it also allows a response to the extreme differentiation of religious affiliation, to claim of state control on organizational and autonomy of religious denomination, which is proper of many states, above all in the Balkans, wanting to find support for their feeble identity in alliance with certain religious denominations. Those was the provision in the acts of religious freedom these countries have adopted overall of the exclusive denominations to affiliation groups, pursuing the control of containment of the cults to auto-organizing through laws on religions, groups and communities, contrasting the full expression of religious autonomy belonging to any group or person to claim to be a religious denomination, behave like such and have conscience in it. Thank you for the patience in my English.